Good day, everyone. My name is Colin Heidel. I'm VP of Sales and Marketing for Q2 in Canada. We're here today to do an assembly of a brand new bottom hole pump. I've got Mark Kostler and Kyle along with us today to help put the pump together. Okay, we're going to start with the plunger assembly here, and the plunger assembly is in the interior of the barrel chamber, and it's moving alongside in the barrel chamber with the rod string and the pump chuck, etc. It's the piston within the system itself. So the gentlemen here are going to piece this together. We're going to start at the top end. As we tighten the plunger assembly down in the vices, we're going to install the top plunger cage onto the plunger itself. And as we tighten each component, we're going to mark these and make sure that they're torqued to spec. So we're going to make the proper measurement here. We're going to torque this and we're going to turn it to that specific torque to follow our API specs. We can assure at that point that that component is tightened and we have no worries about it falling apart downhole. We're then going to take our valve rod assembly. We have a long piece of valve rod that we attach into the top plunger cage. We always lubricate each thread as we put it into the components. We are also going to mark this and torque this to make sure that it's tightened up to specifications. And now we're going to move to the bottom end of the plunger assembly. We'll tighten it down on this end. We're going to take our traveling cage. So within the pumping system, we have two valves that work in unison. We test each valve when we put it into either a new or repaired pump to make sure that this valve holds. It's imperative that this valve holds, as if these are leaking at any time, the valve will not produce fluid to surface. Once we've identified that that valve holds, we then take it and we put it into the traveling cage, which is situated at the bottom of the plunger assembly. Once we have the ball and seat situated inside the traveling cage, we then attach a seat plug to keep that ball and seat in place, and then we tighten down our traveling cage along with the seat plug to the bottom of the plunger assembly. We again then mark it, we gauge our torque, and we tighten it to that specification. And again, it's very important that we don't over-tighten this or under-tighten these. We'll either have it fall apart or we'll have a possibility of a fracture in the cage itself. And before we insert the plunger assembly into the barrel chamber, we want to mic our plungers to make sure that the fit is accurate. We do this on new and certainly on repaired. As we bring the pumps in from the field to repair them, we actually mic every foot on the plunger assembly to identify where we are with our fit and the wear on the plunger itself. In this case, when the plunger goes out brand new, this is an 1.5 inch plunger with a -5 fit, so we're going out at 1.495. The next thing we do in the process is we mic the ID of our barrel chambers. We have air mics that we hook up, attach it to an air hose, we gauge it to 0, and then we run it through the ID of our barrel and test every foot to make sure that we're, again, within our API specs. We zero it out on the air mic. We then take the miking system, we run it through the barrel to the end of the barrel. And we gauge every foot to make sure that we're within the API specifications and there's no concerns with our chroming process. Again, we also do this in our repair process as they come in from the field. Obviously, through millions of cycles, the chrome will wear, and we need to gauge that to determine whether we need to replace the barrel or not. And prior to putting our components on our pump barrel, we also have a vise system where we clamp down on the barrels. The individual sizes, anywhere from 1.25 inches up to 5 3/4. Once we clamp it into position, we can tighten down onto the barrel, therefore eliminating any excess marks, etc. on the barrel itself. Once we have it tight, we can then continue to proceed to put our components, thread the components into the pump barrel itself. As I mentioned earlier, we have 2 valves inside the downhole rod pump, one on the plunger assembly, the traveling assembly we call it, and we also have one at the bottom of the pump barrel. We call it a standing assembly. Kyle tests the valve again to make sure that it holds properly, and we have no issues with that. We then take that valve and we put it inside what we call the standing cage. We have a cage bushing that we screw into that, which will then insert on the bottom of the pump, which we'll show you now. And again, through our process of building pumps new, we want to put a gauge on the end of our pump here to indicate whether the traveling valve is in fact working. We tighten our standing cage into position, and we'll have a gauge on the end of the cage bushing to determine that our valve is in fact working properly. And once again, following API specs, Kyle is going to mark this. We're going to key, make sure that we have our torque where we need it to be as we tighten it up. Again, it's a precise process, as we can't be too tight or we can't be too loose. The next part of the process, as the boys grab a hold of the plunger assembly, we take that assembly down and we insert it in the barrel chamber. We will take that plunger assembly all the way down until we bump the top of the standing cage. We are now ready to test this valve to make sure our traveling valve holds. What Mark will do is pull that plunger assembly out of the barrel, and we can see that our traveling valve is in fact working. Now, as we finish off the bottom end, we need to take our cage bushing and our strainer nipple and tighten it into the standing cage that we've already have in place. This is to keep the ball and seat in position. Once again, Kyle is going to mark this. Going to use the torque key, and we will tighten it up to API specifications. Also see here that Kyle is backing up the standing cage because we have it torqued and in position currently. We do not want to move it off that mark. He then torques against the friction wrench and tightens up both the cage bushing and the strainer nipple to specifications. The last thing we do is put on the hold-down assembly, and what the hold-down assembly is, it's the apparatus that keeps us in the pump seating nipple down hole. We have a section of cups here we call seating cups. They fit in a precision ID seat nipple and hold that pump into position, and also give us the opportunity to pressure up and move the fluid north to the wellhead. On top of this apparatus, we have a top check assembly. That's for gas relief. It holds the hydrostatic head off the traveling valve, which is very important in our pumping process when we're dealing with gas. Mark then takes that apparatus, slide it over the valve rod, and again we screw that onto the barrel assembly, keeping in mind that torquing the components to exact specifications is very important in what we're doing. And the hold down is very important to the downhole rod pump. Again, there's very many types of pump seating nipples out there, different types of hold downs, different types of cups, and we have to make sure that we have the exact right profile so that we don't experience any issues once the pump is downhole and landed in the PSN. So again, Mark is using his keys. We're going to torque against that. We'll tighten those components together as we move through the operation. And keep in mind at Q2 here, we do close to 50,000 pumps a year. We have the ability to repair all styles of pumps, but we have the expertise to do so. These gentlemen do repair these pumps and put these pumps together new with a great deal of skill set. And a lot of times they're working under pressure, late nights, that sort of thing. As we know, the oil patch does not stop. So once Mark has this hold down assembly tightened, we know now that that pump is ready to go down hole. Now the only other thing that we do is once we have this traveling assembly in the barrel, we make sure we hit the bottom with it. And at that point, we cut 1/4 of an inch off the valve rod. We thread it. We have a valve rod bushing and a pickup sub. And at that point, that pump is ready to go. And again, we use our keys to torque. And that's your downhole rod pump. One of the processes that we need to do as we finish off the pump design is we need to measure the actual stroke length in which that plunger assembly travels within the barrel chamber. This is very important to us, as we need to be longer than the pump jack on surface. So if the pump jack is on surface is 100 inch, we need to be 120 on the pump. We can't be 90. If we were, that pump would come out of the pump seating nipple on every stroke. So it's very important for us to make sure that we have the proper size of pump, the stroke length that we need for that specific design, and we're good to go from there. Again, the gentlemen do this with all repaired pumps. It's consistent. We follow the same procedures every time. Every pump shop within Q2 does these processes the same way, and it's very accurate. But that's all we have today. Thank you for your time. Any questions, get a hold of any Q2 representatives for any answers. Thank you.